My name is Rachel DeGuzman. I'm the Director of Engagement at Geva Theatre. And I'm so happy to be here with our featured speaker for Geva Insights for Somewhere, Jayme Bermudez, and he's the Assistant Artistic Director at Borinquen Dance Theatre. And we're just gonna, this is about a half-an-hour conversation, and we're just gonna, the intention is to expand consideration of the play and also provide a local connection to what you're seeing on stage. I'm not sure everyone was aware here that Rochester has a significant Puerto Rican population here. We're seeing a story that's set in the 50s in New York City, but there's also a significant connection and a through line to today in Rochester. And I wanted to read, you know, one of the things that is said in it's all referencing West Side Story. And I think a lot of people may be very aware of the song America from the play. And it's such an important song for us to sort of ground this conversation in, because it is set in the 50s. This was a song that actually was on Broadway. And I'm going to start the conversation out here. It says, everywhere grime in America, organized crime in America, terrible time in America, you forget I'm in America. And I think that that's referencing that it's not an immigration from Puerto Rico, it's a great migration that happened from Puerto Rico, because Puerto Rico is America. So let's start there and just, we're in the 1950s, and then we're going to move on to a lot of the work you do today.
Yeah, so we call it the big Latinx diaspora, you know, coming from Puerto Rico. And what was happening in the 50s was we had Operation Bootstrap, right? We were looking at industrializing Puerto Rico. And so we had a lot of Puerto Ricans that lived on farms that had this ton of space, so they had a ton of children that were helping them build these farms. And America wanted to industrialize Puerto Rico. They wanted that farmland to create sugarcane industries. And so they convinced the families that there would be more opportunities in America. And they convinced the families to come to America by making these great deals of tickets, you know, $40 an airfare. Now imagine now, if I go to Puerto Rico now, I'm paying $300 and something for one way, right? Round trip, $40, and you're taking about 5 people. The thing about it is that what they didn't realize is kind of like what the genie from Aladdin says, all this great power, tiny little living space. All this great opportunity was promised to the Puerto Ricanos, tiny little living space. We had families of 7 and 8 living in 1-bedroom apartments, trying to make ends meet.
Like in this play.
Like in this play, very much like in this play. And not only was it just one family, but sometimes you had many families that were leaving Puerto Rico and coming to the Americas, and they needed places to stay. Very much like Jayme's story. But Jayme's story is a little bit different because the Puerto Ricanos somos sin cara. We're without face. We embrace anybody that we think or feel is family, and that's how Jayme's story gets in. But even those kids from the neighborhood, they were brought into those families too as well, and they were being fed, because at home, as you heard with Jayme's story, he's sitting at a bar stool with his parents while they're getting drunk. That boy was probably not getting fed in a Puerto Rican home. One thing you were going to get was some food, right? And
So how did your family come from Puerto Rico to the mainland of the United States?
So it's interesting because so my mom moved to the United States when she was 5 with my grandparents. However, yo nací en Puerto Rico. I was born in Puerto Rico and came here when I was 2. But it's that interesting story of, you know, when she said, I think Mom, it was in the telling of her story that, you know, during the Great Depression, they had to go into the other towns and work. And so my grandfather had a 6th grade education. And my grandmother, who was, I believe, the 4th oldest of 16 siblings, When I tell you the families in Puerto Rico were big, they were big, but they had all that land, right? During that Great Depression, she was sent to go work as a maid and a nanny in other places. And then, you know, they decided that they wanted more for their family and they moved to the Americas. And, you know, my mom ended up marrying very, very young, 16 years old. And it gets to a point, kind of like the economy, the economical status that the family was talking about, where it really wears down the family dynamic, you know, mentally. What you see was a very strong matriarchal woman here. My mom didn't have the blessing to be always that strong matriarchal woman, you know, with poverty, with where we were living, with the conditions we were in, her mental health state. And my dad also, you know, he was after, just a bit after this, right? He was, so he became a drunk and a drug addict, right? And that mentally wore down my mom, where she couldn't take care of us. And I was sent to Puerto Rico to be raised for a bit with my grandmother. So that way I can be able to live. Because what happened was my mom got postpartum, and on top of dealing with the economical things, being married at 16, and, you know, having an alcoholic husband, those things caused her to try to harm me as a child. And, you know, these are things that, again, you see this matriarchal woman and she's fighting. She's fighting, and I'm never going to take away the fight from my mother, because the one thing that I will say is she was a fighter. However, sometimes the struggle got her over the fight. And that was reality.
Now, you know, and I think that, you know, but it was having complications in families is something that you could relate to in this way.
Absolutely.
But we had a little conversation before, and one of the things that, and it may be the circumstances in which you were born, added to this, but you did not grow up in a family that was supporting or even acknowledging creativity in the
absolutely not.
So that was a divergent point for you in this play.
It was, and this is interesting because my mom is a singer. My sibling in New York City is a singer. Two of my brothers are visual artists. One of my brothers is actually a master drummer. My stepfather's a master drummer. And I'm a dancer. And I hid dancing from my family. One, it wasn't a masculine thing to do. And two, it wasn't a Christian thing to do. Here you saw that mother wanting Alejandro to be a dancer. And Alejandro, at the end, you see he's an amazing dancer. Some of us, it's just innate and natural in us, you know? I didn't have the affordability to take the classes. I actually got in trouble in school because I was angry with everything that was going on at home, and I got into a fight. And the counselor, Sandra Martinez, said, "You're staying after school for a dance program." I said, "Yeah, right. You're gonna have to try to get my parents to agree to that." And she sent a letter home saying that I was staying after for extra help. It wasn't until I was 21 that my parents saw that I was a dancer. They saw me at a Christmas party, and when I tell you that my heart went from my throat, listen, okay, I was twisting a woman here and twisting a woman there, and I dipped her and looked up into the audience and saw my two parents, and I said, "Oh, I am dead." And I'm 21. And I'm 21 years old, right? But I also go back to just what was taking place during this time. I went home and I reflected on what I saw in some of the conversations we had that night. And the idea that during this time of this play, the 50s, the 60s, the Harlem Renaissance, the Civil Rights Movement, us looking for platforms, there were so many black and brown artists that were naturally talented that didn't have the ability, the money, or the finances, or the circumstances to be able to go to classes or further. And if they were plucked for their natural talent, another face was put in front of them because of what the times were, right? And so there were so many black and brown families that couldn't see their dream realized at all. And by the time I was born, that wasn't something you should be doing. It's not profitable. It's not going to build character. You are going to die a drunk. You are going to die alone because you are going to live your dreams like Miguel Piñero says, a bodega sold dream. A bodega sold dream. The bodegas are where we go to buy our coffee, our bread, right? You're going into a bodega to pick off a dream off of a shelf, and nothing's going to happen with it. He also said something though that reminds me of the ending of that poem, the ending of that play that sits so well with me, and it's, just once before I die, I want to climb up on a tenement sky and dream my lungs out till I die, then scatter my ashes over the Lower East Side. He was another underlooked person that also came from those same experiences, right? So I didn't grow up with the push that the Candelaria had. I grew up hiding that, and I didn't see the success as a dancer or as a performer until, matter of fact, just recently, to be honest.
So I'm going to give a little bit more of your biographical information.
Yes.
That you may not have been pushed in your dreams, in the direction of your dreams, but you've made it a part of your passion and your career to help support the dreams of other people.
Absolutely, and so that's where, Alejandro and I have so many things, so many layers that I found in him. Jayme too as well, because I'm Jayme, but my name by all my friends is Jayme, right? But Jayme too, because I'm the one out of the siblings that have done something with my career, that have done something with my arts, right? And sometimes you get that anger, you get that upset of, you left the family. It's like, no, I just wanted something different, right? But like Alejandro, he didn't make it to the Broadway stage. He didn't realize his dream until after the younger generation realized their dream. And so I wasn't made for the stage. As much as I wanted to be on the stage, I wanted to go to School of the Arts, and I was told, no, you can't do that. That's where the queer boys go. I was a queer boy. Okay, my parents didn't realize I was a queer boy. Nope, you can't go there. You know, I had to go to Edison Tech, where my brothers went because they played sports. I wasn't a sports kid, you know? But what I realized was my gift, my calling, was to create platforms for younger generations, to be able to keep a safe space, to be able to provide those words of encouragement and allow them to recognize their self and their identity and say, there is more. There wasn't a platform for you then, but the more we push, the more we create platforms. And we're making it. We're making those platforms now. I am realizing that and seeing that. And a year ago, I wasn't in the same space that I'm in now. A year ago, I was very much like Alejandro, very downcast, like, the heck I'm doing, wasting my time when I should, you know, I've got 2 boys that I'm also raising, you know, that love that I'm a dancer, but sometimes I miss out on time with them, but I'm also teaching them that just because I became a dad doesn't mean I stopped dreaming. I'd be a whole hypocrite to tell them, reach for your dreams if I haven't realized my own, right? And so a year ago, I wasn't in the same place. I ended up doing being the choreographer in the Heights for NTID, RIT, and I had an amazing experience with that. But it was the song Champagne, where Vanessa says, take a walk around the neighborhood with me. See what you'll be leaving behind. And In the Heights is about gentrification and some of these same layers, right, that was taking place and the losing of a neighborhood and a culture. And I took a walk around the neighborhood, and when I told you I was humbled to see community of deaf people and speaking people as one dancing on the same stage, to see dancers that I brought with me in the show taking a lead. Daniela was a student that I was working with in 4th grade. She was in 8th grade when she played her role of Daniela, a lead role amongst college students and adults, and stole the show in some parts. I played a part in cultivating I took a walk around the neighborhood and realized that if I'd left, if there wasn't a Jayme Bermudez doing what he was doing, there'd be less of us reaching the platforms. So many kids have come through the doors, and so many kids have left with the idea that there's just a little bit more out there for them if they can look past their front door.
So let's talk about a year later.
Yes.
In your work with Borinquen Dance Theatre. How did you feel when you watched the play and connected? Well, I have to tell everybody, last night we had our first Mondays at Geva, and it was really wonderful. We had 2 of the company members, and Jaime is the assistant artistic director there, dancing in our lobby, and it was wonderful to drumming by Ramon Perez and friends. I'm sorry, I don't remember everybody's name right now, but it was just a really joyous event. How did you feel connecting what we saw today somewhere and then connecting in the spiritual realm of this building with the work you're doing with Borinquen Dance Theatre?
So, for me, let's talk about yesterday. Yesterday was iconic for me. I, have had probably the most fun these last couple of days watching the show with yesterday's experience. Because it's the first time that I've seen in my community. When I talk about my community, I'm talking about the Latinx community, but I'm also talking about a very distinct group of Latinx community. See, I grew up on Clinton Avenue. So you have your professional Latinos, you have your in-between Latinos, you have your Latinos that are really, 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 really rough. And, you know, we recognized range yesterday. And it was amazing that Borinquen was able to be a part of that experience, because I feel like so many of these great things in Rochester go underrepresented, right? Range started in the 80s. Safe place for young people, artists, graffiti artists, DJs, dancers, 4 pillars of hip hop. Created all these beautiful platforms, and you know, graffiti was is still considered vandalism, right? But the stores were, it's getting gentrified, but you know, it's you know, for our inner city, it's still considered vandalism. And you know, at that time, he was able to get the storefronts to give these young people a page to draw on. Their side of the walls, their stories now being told. And then, you know, I take into consideration Borinquen's 41 years in the community, run by a female, okay? There's a lot of dancers. You've got Draper, you've got Fagan, you've got Hochstein. These are all male names. Now, Nidia Padilla Rodriguez is very much like there's a mom up here pushing those dreams. Be a dancer, get on stage. Wepa. And so to be able to be a part of celebration, to be able to be a part of knowing that the folkloric culture, the idea of the Puertorriqueño, although it has morphed into many different things, right? That's where we get our salsa from. It's the song from Cuba, it's the instruments from Bomba en Plena, it's the jazz from America, and then, for the most part, it was a Puerto Rican singer, because Cuba had a hard time letting their people go, right? And if they left, they stayed. That's why we kept Celia Cruz. But the Fania was a lot of Puerto Rican singers. And so to be a part of spreading my culture, bringing awareness, talking about cultural identity, talking about diasporic roots and what they mean and why we should hold on to them, but also things like this, having a moment to really give parallels of what we see on stage and what's real. Because, you know, a lot of people have saw West Side Story, and a lot of people love Jerome Robbins. I mean, I'm a dancer, and I love Jerome. I mean, very upset that his choreography wasn't in the new show, right? But that story is told through dance, and we see all these mots, but we fail to realize that, one, they're teenagers, They're 14, 15, and 16 years old. They're not adults. 2, they're fighting and killing each other over territory. Because of what took place with the Candelaria's home, now they're being forced to move into another neighborhood, and that neighborhood is getting gentrified as well. So we're trying to keep the only peace that we had. And these are themes that young people have been dealing with throughout time. But we lose that with the dance and the music.
So the last thing I'm going to say, because we're trying to keep these to a half an hour,
yes,
is I want to go back to America, because we are so, the lyrics of America. Again, we're going, so I'm going to quote this from the lyrics of America, and then I want to you to talk about it in the context of your experience and what this means today, because this is almost 7 years later.
Mm-hmm.
It says, life can be bright in America if you can fight in America. Life is all right in America if you're all white in America.
Let's talk about that, child. Let's talk about that. You know, there have always, I have gone back whenever I do talk backs, or whenever I am working with students and we're talking about privilege, or we're talking about identity, and I've gone back and I've watched some of the news shows from that time that were done by all white casters, and seeing how they told our story from their lens, right? And we were always considered angry. The war on drugs was because of us, forgetting that we were poor. How the hell did we bring them drugs in, right? But we were angry people. That's what we were considered, not recognizing that we had to fight for our space. We had to protect ourselves. Cisco ran into the home after being beaten up from moving into the wrong neighborhood because he spoke a different language and he was a different color. And I want you to go back to the gangs of New York, because that was real. Although it was made a movie, that was real. The 5 Points was real in New York City. If you grew up in New York, you know the history, and you know that we have been fighting for territory quite often as Americans. Now you put in Puerto Ricanos or Cubanos or Dominicanos that are coming in, it's a whole different thing. I go back to now, if you're all white in America, the statement that mom makes about Miss Rivera, right? And it says, and that's because she is a Dominican and she has bad ways. A lot of people don't realize what that statement was. You have to be Latinx to understand what that statement was. That is a statement of colorism. It is coming from the darkest woman in the family. Okay? That's the first thing I want you to realize. She was dark. If you looked at the picture of the father, although they described him as having green eyes, he was dark. The children were a little bit lighter. What people don't realize, what was happening in Dominican Republic was that Trujillo, the dictator, was trying to get rid of the blackness in the island. He was taking people into the fields that were black and murdering them, right? So it was about her dark skin that made her have those bad ways. There's a refrán in Puerto Rico that says, "Y tu abuela dónde está?" And your grandma, where's she at? Because so many Puerto Ricans get into the mindset of the caste system that was placed upon us by the Spaniards. If you're Maltizo, if you're Criollo, if you're Negrura, there is 16 different ways to cast us, but all of them, if you are not a Peninsulare, if you are not from Europe, you are not considered white. And so when we move into the Americas and the civil rights, we're at the cusp of the civil rights movement, right? Come on, we're in the 50s, so civil rights is just a little bit after that. If you are not white, you're not going to survive. My grandfather, he was pretty light. He wasn't as dark as my grandmother was. My mom is Afro-Latina, right? He still had to drink out of colored fountains during that time. And so, you know, that idea of privilege that came from mom in that moment during that prayer, she didn't want her son to be with Miss Rivera, not because she had bad morals and she was a big bar mitzvah party for every man in the neighborhood, right? It was the color of her skin. And that's acknowledged in the song. And we're still dealing with colorism. That's what we're still dealing amongst our black and brown individuals. It's no longer racism. There is colorism.
Lie. That wasn't my last question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. What I want to say is that, what I want to point out, and just, I think I saw this in this play, is even, I wanted to set the stage with some of the lyrics from America, because we're in 2022 and we don't always know our history.
Right.
But that was what's so powerful in the dreaming, in the whole idea, despite everything that is how you are perceived, and despite everything, that was what was so powerful for her having such big dreams for her children. And I think that was in reality, maybe not to be a West Side Story, but that was how a lot of people, had put dreams in their children. Can you talk a little bit about that from your perspective?
Absolutely. So, one, it's that idea of luck, you split it down the middle, right? Hard work, you do, right? Talent, God gives you. Luck, you split it down the middle. Dreaming is about all of those things. So, I'm a father of 5. I'm a queer dad. And I was married for 15 years. And, we had a great relationship. But when we got separated, my sons asked me one day, Papa, did you leave the family because you wanted to pursue your career as a dancer? I said, no, never that. The days that you were sick, I stood home with you. The days we didn't have babysitters, I took you to work with me. You were always my #1 priority. It's one thing that was different about dance. I can go to the dance floor and I can fall on that dance floor and it will never hurt me like the times I felt in my real life. I can go to that dance floor and I can be a whole nother person and live in a world where nothing could take me, nothing could hurt me, nothing could touch me. And I've been through some things in my life. You see, my dreams of being a dancer wasn't to be on stage to hear the people yell and say, oh, what a great job. My dreams of a dancer was to be able to live in a world where I didn't hurt. And I didn't want you to hurt. And so if I can show you how I hit the floor every single time, how I show you my discipline, how I show you my dedication, you can never say that you've never had an example of what it means to fight for your dreams. You can never say that someone didn't show you what it meant to want something so much that you will push through it. A lot of people don't know this. Some of the company knows this. At 26, I broke my back in 5 places and couldn't walk for a year. I was told I wasn't going to be able to dance. I was told by the time I was 35 that I'd have trouble walking and I might need a cane. Baby, I am 43. And I danced yesterday.
We got video proof.
I have never let anything or anyone take me from what I know is true to me. There have been so many people that have worked on, well, they got so dreams and I want to do this and I want to do that, and I've encouraged them, go ahead and do that. But when it comes to me, if I feel it and I'm smiling, oh, you are going to have to take that from my hands, and believe me, I'm a fighter. I went to Main Street for boxing, so.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I am so happy to be